The silver watch in Sheriff Caleb Boone's palm still ticked, but the initials carved inside, ECB, belonged to a man he'd hanged at dawn. The metal felt warm. Not from the October sun slanting through his office window, but from his own fingers gripping it too tight, like he was afraid it might slip away if he loosened his hold. He'd held it this way for 93 mornings now, ever since he'd taken it from the evidence box and told himself it was for the county records. Coffee sat on the windowsill, untouched for an hour. The surface had turned glossy and still, a thin skin forming on top. Outside, Pine Ridge, Colorado was waking up. Mr. Hendricks opened the feed store across the street, his boots leaving damp prints on the wooden boards from the early frost. A wagon rolled past, loaded with timber, the driver yawning into his collar. And there she was, the woman in the grey dress. Same spot as always. Same steady rhythm of her broom against the apothecary boardwalk. She kept her head tilted down, dark gold hair pinned loose at her neck, a few strands escaping to catch the light. She wasn't young. Not old either. Somewhere in between, like the season itself. Caleb watched her work the bristles into the corners, methodical, unhurried. She never looked up. Never greeted anyone. The apothecary owner, Mr. Pemberton, had told him once that her name was Anna, that her husband died of fever 3 winters back, that she rented the small room upstairs and paid in cash on the 1st of every month. That was all anyone knew. Deputy Fry shifted in the chair behind him, leather creaking under his weight. You gonna stare at that watch all day, or are we gonna actually do some law work? Caleb didn't turn. Court's at 10. It's 7:30. Then I've got time. Fry bit into a piece of jerky, chewing loud. You've had that watch in your pocket since the Crowe hanging. I ain't blind. You know that thing's supposed to be in evidence, right? Caleb's thumb pressed harder against the initials. ECB Elias Crowe Boone. The outlaw who'd robbed 7 stagecoaches over 4 years, who'd shot 2 drivers in cold blood, who'd stood on the scaffold with no blindfold and no last words except a smile that Caleb still saw sometimes, right before sleep took him. The trapdoor opened at 6:12 a.m. on July 19, 1883. 3 months ago. 93 days. The watch hadn't stopped ticking once. She's sweeping again, Fry said, not looking up from his jerky. Same as every day. You know, most men watch sunsets. You watch a widow clean a porch. Caleb didn't answer. The woman, Anna, had caught the broom handle on a loose nail near the edge of the boards. She knelt slowly, the way someone does when their knees have memorized the motion. Her fingers worked at the nail, trying to wiggle it free. Through the glass, he could see her breath misting in the cold air. He should help her. He should walk across the street, introduce himself properly, offer to fix the nail. That's what a sheriff did. That's what a decent man did. Instead, he stood frozen, the watch ticking against his palm, the initials pressing into his skin like they were trying to carve themselves there permanently. Sheriff. Fry's voice shifted. You okay? Caleb blinked. Fine. You're rubbing your ribs again. He looked down. His left hand had drifted to the scar beneath his shirt, tracing the raised tissue through the fabric. Old habit. The bullet that put that scar there came from Elias Crowe's gun, fired wild during the arrest. Crowe could have aimed true, could have killed him. Instead, he'd aimed low, grazed the ribs, and smiled. Asterisk, that's for later, asterisk Crowe had said. Asterisk, so you remember me. Asterisk. Caleb dropped his hand, set the watch on the windowsill, picked up his coffee. Cold. He drank it anyway. The woman stood up from the nail. She'd worked it loose, held it between her fingers like a tiny iron tooth. For a moment, she just looked at it. Then she raised her head. Straight at his window. Straight at him. Caleb didn't move. Didn't breathe. His coffee cup hovered halfway to his mouth. 3 months of standing at this window, and she had never once looked up. Never acknowledged the man in the badge watching from across the street. But she was looking now. Her eyes weren't grey or blue. In this light, They were something else, amber, almost, like creek water over autumn leaves. Calm. Steady. Not angry. Not sad. Just aware. Like she'd known all along he was standing there. Like she'd been waiting for him to notice that she noticed. Caleb stepped back. His elbow hit the coffee cup. Cold liquid splashed over his wrist, down his sleeve, dripping onto the floorboards. He didn't feel it. Whoa there. Fry scrambled up, grabbing a rag. Easy, boss. It's just coffee. Caleb wiped his hand on his thigh. His pulse hammered in his throat. I need some air. Court's at 10, remember? Judge Tolliver don't like waiting. I'll be back. He was already moving, down the stairs, boots loud on each tread. The front door swung open, and the morning hit him, cold, clean, smelling of horse and pine and wood smoke. He stopped on the boardwalk, hands empty, breath visible. She was still standing there, still holding the nail, still looking at him. Up close, he could see the wear in her dress. Mended collar, restitched hem, fabric faded from washing. Her hands were red from cold. The broom leaned against the apothecary wall. Caleb opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She spoke first. That what you carry, she said. It was his. Not a question. A statement. Her voice was quiet, steady as her gaze. Caleb's hand moved to his pocket. Found the watch. Pulled it out, chain dangling. It caught the light, spun slow. Yes, She looked at it. Not with grief. Not with anger. Just recognition. Like seeing an old photograph, familiar and distant all at once. He always wound it at night, she said. Before he slept. Said he liked knowing time was passing, even in the dark. Caleb didn't know what to say. He held out the watch. It's county evidence. I need to return it to. Keep it. He stopped. She met his eyes again. It's been in a drawer for 3 months. You're the first person to carry it since he did. A wagon rolled past. Someone called out a greeting. Caleb didn't hear it. Why? He asked. She looked at the nail in her palm. Turned it over. Because he told me you would. The words sat between them, heavy as stones. A cold breeze lifted the loose strands of her hair. She didn't shiver. Caleb's thumb found the initials again. ECB. He'd assumed they were Elias Crowe Boone. But what if? He said you were a fair man, Anna continued. He said that mattered more than most things. He killed 2 men. Yes. He robbed stagecoaches. Shot at my deputy. Yes. He never gave up his accomplices. Never said who helped him. Anna was quiet for a long moment. Then, what would you have done with their names? Caleb didn't have an answer. He wasn't sure he ever had. She slipped the nail into her pocket. Picked up her broom. The watch keeps good time. Elias always kept good time. She began to sweep again, slow and steady. You should wind it more often. Caleb stood on the boardwalk, the cold creeping through his boots. The watch ticked in his hand. Across the street, Deputy Fry watched from the window, jerky forgotten. He should go back inside. Should prepare for court, review the case files, be the sheriff this town needed. Instead, he watched a woman in a grey dress sweep the same board she'd swept every morning for 3 years, and he thought about what it meant to carry a dead man's watch. He thought about what it meant that she'd known he would. The watch ticked. 7:52 a.m. October 17th, 1883. Caleb wound it carefully, 1 turn, 2, feeling the spring tighten beneath his thumb. Then he slipped it back into his pocket, close to the scar that still remembered the shape of Elias Crowe's bullet. He didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything shifted. Not with a gunshot or a chase or a dramatic confession. Just a woman sweeping, a man watching, and a watch that kept passing time whether anyone was ready for it or not. Sometimes the biggest changes arrive in the quietest moments. A loose nail. a cold cup of coffee, a widow who looks at a sheriff and sees something no one else has bothered to look for. Caleb Boone had hanged her husband, and she was the first person in 3 months to call him fair. The court bell rang at 9:30. Caleb gathered his files, strapped on his colt, checked his reflection in the window glass. Same face, same badge, same watch in his pocket. But when he walked past the apothecary, Anna looked up from her sweeping. Not startled, not expectant, just present. He touched the brim of his hat. She nodded once. That was all. That was everything. Sometimes justice isn't a rope or a gavel. Sometimes it's just a man learning to carry something heavier than a badge, lighter than a watch, and realizing his hands have been ready for it all along. Outside, the Colorado morning stretched golden and cold. The feed store opened. The wagons rolled. A woman swept the boardwalk, and a sheriff walked to court, and a silver watch ticked steady against his heart. Time kept passing. For the first time in 93 days, Caleb Boone didn't mind. The moon sat low over Pine Ridge, fat and yellow as old cheese, throwing long shadows across the boardwalks. Inside the sheriff's office, the clock read 11:47 p.m. Caleb Boone hadn't moved from his chair in 3 hours. His thumb found the scar on his ribs. Found it, traced it, let it go. Found it again. The rhythm had become its own kind of sleep, a lullaby his body played when his mind refused to quiet. The watch sat on the desk, face up. He'd wound it at 8 p.m., just like always. 11:48. Still ticking. Upstairs, his bed waited. He'd made it that morning, tight corners, military style. Hadn't lain in it since Tuesday. Today was Thursday. October 18th now, technically. The air had that after-midnight chill, the kind that settled into floorboards and stayed until dawn. Footsteps on the stairs. Caleb's fingers stopped on the scar. These weren't Fry's boots. Fry walked heel first, heavy, like he was trying to break something with every step. These were lighter, softer, deliberate. Asterisk tap. Tap. Tap dot asterisk. Not running. Not hurrying. Just walking. Coming up the 16 steps to the second floor landing, where the only door was his. Caleb stood. His chair scraped the floor. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet. His palm found the Colt on his hip. Cold metal, familiar grain. His thumb rested on the hammer, not cocking, just ready. The way a man learns to be ready when he doesn't know what's coming. 3 knocks. Not loud. Not timid. Measured. The kind of knock that knew someone was listening. Caleb opened the door. She stood in the lantern light. Not the grey dress. Brown wool now, simpler, older. A satchel strap crossed her chest, worn leather, the buckle dented. Her hair was loose, falling past her shoulders, catching the glow like spun wheat at harvest. Her hands were empty. No broom. No nail. Just fingers curled at her sides, red from cold. "I need your wagon," she said. "My brother's child is bleeding." 7 words. Her voice was lower than he remembered from that morning. Or maybe it was the same, and he'd just been too far away to hear it right. No play. No tears. Just a statement, flat and true as a bullet in the chamber. He should ask which brother. He knew she had none. He should close the door. Should say the county wagons were for official business only. Come back at sunrise, file a request. Instead, how far? 12 miles. The cutoff road. The cutoff. It ran through Crowe's Gorge, named for the family that settled there 40 years ago. Named for the blood that soaked into its clay during the stagecoach robbery of 79. Named for the man Caleb hanged at dawn on July 19th. Caleb reached for his boots. The wagon rattled through moonlight. Pine Ridge fell away behind them, houses shrinking to yellow windows, then to nothing. The road turned to dirt, then to mud, then to the hard-packed gravel of the cutoff. Anna sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, spine straight as a church candle. She didn't grip the seat, didn't brace herself against the bumps. Just rode, steady, like she'd done this 100 times before. The air smelled different out here. Sage and pine and something else. Old smoke, old iron, old memory. Caleb's ribs ached where the scar pulled tight. He could smell her soap. Lye, mostly. Clean and sharp. But underneath, something else. Tobacco. Not fresh. Old, sunk into the wool fibers, faded but not gone. The scent of a man who'd smoked a pipe and stood close to his wife. Caleb kept his eyes on the road. "You never said why," he said. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "You never asked. You could have gone to the doctor in town. Pemberton would have driven you." Pemberton is 73 years old and sleeps with a horn trumpet in his ear. He wouldn't have heard me knock until morning. Fry, then. He's got a horse. Fry asks questions. Her voice didn't accuse, just stated, "You don't." The wagon hit a rut. Caleb's hand braced against the seat, inches from hers. He pulled it back. The gorge opened before them, walls of rock rising dark on either side. Moonlight painted the stone silver, carved shadows into the crevices. This was where they'd cornered Elias Crowe 3 years ago. Where Caleb had fired the first shot and watched the outlaw fall to his knees, still smiling. Asterisk, that's for later, asterisk Crowe had said, blood on his teeth. Asterisk, so you remember me. Asterisk. Caleb remembered. The horses slowed as the road narrowed. They knew this path, felt the weight of it in their hooves. Caleb didn't urge them faster. His thumb found the watch in his pocket. Smooth metal, steady tick. "Why here?" he said. Anna didn't answer. Her hands remained folded. Her gaze remained forward. And then he saw it. Not a cabin. Not the kind of place a family would live. It was built into the rock face itself, the front wall made of salvaged timber, the roof covered in sod and wild grass. A chimney rose from the back, thin smoke curling into the moonlight. If you didn't know where to look, you'd ride right past it and never see a thing. She knew where to look. She was out of the wagon before the wheel stopped, boots hitting dirt, satchel swinging. Caleb followed. His Colt was in his hand. He didn't remember drawing it. The door opened before Anna touched it. A woman stood in the frame, older, grey hair, face lined like river stone. She looked at Caleb, then at Anna, then stepped aside without a word. Inside, the air was warm, thick with wood smoke and something else. Something metallic. A child lay on a pallet by the hearth. Small. 7 years old, maybe 8. Hair the same pale gold as Anna's, spread across a pillow that was more stuffing than fabric. A cloth pressed to her forearm, soaked through, the stain spreading even as Caleb watched. Anna knelt. Her hands moved to the cloth, lifted it carefully. The wound beneath was long, clean, deliberate. Knife work. Not a slip. Not an accident. The girl's eyes opened. Grey. Pale as winter water, clear as glass. She looked at Caleb without fear, without surprise. Like she'd been expecting him. "You're Papa's friend?" she asked. The watch ticked in Caleb's pocket. His thumb pressed hard against the initials. His scar pulled tight. He looked at Anna. She was focused on the wound, pulling bandages from a satchel, her face composed and calm. But her hands trembled. Just barely. Just at the fingertips. "Her name is Ruth," Anna said. "She's 7 years old. She's never left this canyon." Caleb knelt. His badge caught the firelight. "I'm not a doctor." "You're the closest thing we've got." Anna held out a needle, a spool of thread. "You sewed up Fry's arm after the Morrison shooting. He told everyone at the saloon. Said you were steady as a surgeon." Caleb took the needle. His fingers didn't shake. They hadn't shaken since he was 22 and a dying man reached for him from the ground, begging for a priest, for his mother, for anything. Caleb's gun had jammed. His hands had frozen. The man died with his fingers wrapped around Caleb's boot. He'd learned to clean his Colt daily after that. Learned to hold his hands still even when everything inside him was screaming. He threaded the needle. "Hold her steady," he said. Anna placed her hands on Ruth's shoulders. The girl didn't flinch. Her grey eyes stayed on Caleb's face, watching his hands work, watching the needle pierce the skin. "It will hurt," Caleb said. "I know," said Ruth. He stitched. 1, 2, 3. The wound was deep but clean, the edges sharp. A knife that knew its purpose. A hand that didn't hesitate. Caleb didn't ask how it happened. He didn't want to know the answer. Ruth's breathing stayed steady. Her small fingers gripped the blanket, knuckles white, but she didn't cry. Didn't whimper. Just watched Caleb's hands with those grey eyes, patient as winter. "She asks about you," Anna said quietly. Caleb tied a suture. "She doesn't know me." "She knows your name. She knows you took his watch." His hand stopped. The needle hovered. "She's never seen you," Anna continued, "but she's heard me say your name. She found your face in a wanted poster at the post office. Kept it under her mattress." Caleb looked at Ruth. The girl's lips curved, just slightly. "You look older," she said. "In the picture, you're not tired yet." The watch ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Caleb finished the last suture. Cut the thread with his pocket knife. His hands were still steady. But something inside him, something he'd thought was dead, buried, long gone, was starting to crack. "Why?" he asked Anna. "Why bring me here?" Anna didn't answer. She was looking at Ruth, her hand stroking the girl's hair, her face unreadable. Ruth answered instead. "I cut myself," she said. "On purpose. So Mama would go get you." The fire crackled. Smoke curled up the chimney. Outside, the horses stamped and shifted. Caleb looked at Anna. She wouldn't meet his eyes. 7 years old, he said. "She's 7 years old and she cut herself with a knife to bring a stranger to her door." Anna's voice was barely audible. "She wanted to meet you." "Why?" Ruth's small hand reached out. Her fingers touched the watch chain draped across Caleb's pocket, traced the silver links. "Because Papa said you were the only one who'd come," she said. "If we ever needed help." Caleb stood. His legs felt unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else. He moved to the door, stepped outside into the cold. The moon hung overhead, fat and yellow. The wagon waited. The horses breathed steam into the dark. Caleb's hand found the watch. Pulled it out. The initials caught the moonlight, worn and familiar. ECB. He thought of Elias Crowe on the scaffold, smiling through broken teeth. He thought of the bullet scar on his ribs, smooth now, faded. He thought of a 7-year-old girl with grey eyes and a knife wound, who'd kept his wanted poster under her mattress. Asterisk, she'll know, asterisk Crowe had said. But he hadn't meant Anna. He'd meant the child. Caleb Boone stood in the dark of Crowe's Gorge, a dead man's watch in his hand, and realized that some debts don't get paid with rope or badges or time served. Some debts wait. And then they knock on your door at midnight, wearing a mended dress, asking for help you don't know how to give. Inside, the fire glowed. Anna's shadow moved against the wall, tending to her daughter. Ruth's shadow lay still, small hand raised, tracing shapes in the air. Caleb wound the watch. 1 turn. 2. The spring tightened beneath his thumb. Then he walked back through the door, sat down on the dirt floor, and kept watch until dawn. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is stay. Sometimes that's all anyone is asking for. The needle moved through the girl's skin like a fish through dark water. In, out, in, out. Each stitch pulled the edges of the wound together, sealing shut what a blade had opened just hours before. Caleb's hands didn't shake. They never shook anymore. But his chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped rope around his ribs and was pulling it slow. Anna held the lantern close. The flame threw shadows across Ruth's face, made her cheeks look hollow, her eyes too deep. But those grey eyes stayed open. Watching. Always watching. "You're good at that," Ruth said. Her voice was small, but steady. like she was commenting on the weather. Caleb tied off the last suture. Practice. Do you practice a lot? More than I'd like. He reached for the scissors. Snip. The thread fell away. The wound was closed now, 23 tiny stitches in a neat, straight line. A scar she'd carry her whole life. A scar she'd given herself. Anna set the lantern down. Her knuckles brushed Caleb's sleeve as she reached for the cloth to clean the blood from Ruth's arm. He caught the scent of her again. Soap, wood smoke, that faint ghost of tobacco. Close now. Too close. He stood too fast. His knee cracked. The floorboards creaked. I need air, he said. No one stopped him. Outside, the cold hit him like a door slamming shut. He walked until he couldn't see the cabin anymore, until the rock walls of the gorge swallowed the light. His boots crunched on frozen gravel. His breath came out white. The watch ticked in his pocket. Loud, suddenly, accusing. He pulled it out. Stared at the initials in the moonlight. ECB. Elias Crowe Boone. But Crowe's son had died in infancy. Caleb had read the file. September 1875. Born too early, lived 3 days, buried in an unmarked plot outside Denver. The mother's name wasn't listed. Just the father's. Elias Crowe. So who was the girl with grey eyes and steady hands and a knife wound she'd given herself on purpose? Caleb's thumb found the scar on his ribs. Found it, traced it, held it. The bullet that put the scar here came from Elias Crowe's gun. Wild shot. Deliberate miss. That was what Caleb had always told himself. Crowe was cornered, desperate, firing blind. He wasn't aiming. He was just trying to survive. But Crowe had looked him right in the eye when he pulled the trigger. Asterisk, that's for later. Asterisk, he'd said. Asterisk, so you remember me. Asterisk. Not asterisk, remember this star. Remember asterisk me star. Caleb slid the watch back into his pocket. His fingers were numb. He couldn't feel the metal anymore. When he returned to the cabin, Anna was alone. Ruth slept on the pallet, her bandaged arm resting on a folded blanket. Her face was peaceful now, the tension gone. She looked younger in sleep. Smaller. Like a child should look. Anna sat at the table, her back to the wall, facing the door. Like she'd been waiting for him to come back through it. Her hands were wrapped around a tin cup. Steam rose from it, curling into the cold air. She didn't drink. Just held it. Caleb stood in the doorway. His shadow stretched across the floor, merging with hers. She's his, he said. Not a question. Anna didn't look away. She's mine. The file said his son died. 1875. Born too early. That's what Elias told them. Her voice was flat. Tired. He told them the baby didn't survive. It was the only way to keep her safe. Caleb's jaw tightened. From who? From everyone. She finally lifted the cup, took a sip, wincing at the heat. From the men he worked with. From the bounty hunters. From the law that would have put her in an orphanage or worse. He chose the noose over giving them her name. The fire popped. Sparks rose toward the chimney, faded into ash. Caleb's voice came out rough. He visited you. During the trial. Before the hanging. Every week. For a year. Anna set the cup down. Her fingers didn't leave it. He'd hold her through the bars. Sing to her. She was 6 months old when they took him away. She doesn't remember his voice, but she knows the songs. I taught them to her. Why didn't you leave? After he was gone. Why stay here, alone, raising his child in a canyon where no one can find you? Anna looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes were not grey like Ruth's. They were brown, warm as coffee, tired as old leather. Because he told me you'd come, she said. He said the sheriff who arrested him was fair. That you'd find us eventually. That you'd help. Caleb's hand found the watch again. It ticked against his palm, steady, relentless. He didn't know me, Caleb said. He met me 3 times. Once at his arrest, once at his trial, once at his execution. That's not enough to know a man. It was enough for him. He was wrong. Anna stood. Her chair scraped the floor. She was shorter than him, but somehow, in that moment, it didn't feel that way. Was he? She said. You're here. Caleb didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His throat had closed up, tight as a fist. Ruth stirred in her sleep. Her small hand reached out, searching for something. Anna moved to her side, took the hand, held it. The girl settled, breathing deepening. Caleb watched them. Mother and daughter. Widow and orphan. Hidden in a canyon for 3 years, surviving on whatever maps and supplies Elias Crowe had left behind. And now, a 7-year-old girl had cut herself open to bring a stranger to her door. Because her father said he would come. Caleb thought about the wanted poster under Ruth's mattress. His face, sketched in ink, younger and less tired. He thought about her asking, asterisk your papa's friend. Asterisk not asterisk the man who killed him star. Not asterisk the sheriff star. His papa's asterisk friend star. What kind of man teaches his daughter to trust the person who's going to hang him? What kind of man carries that trust like a wound for 3 years and never knows it? Caleb's hand moved to his ribs. The scar was warm under his shirt. He'd thought it was a reminder of violence. A warning. But Elias Crowe hadn't aimed to kill. He'd aimed to mark. Asterisk so you remember me. Asterisk. Not the outlaw. Not the robber. Not the killer. The father. Caleb looked at Anna. She was stroking Ruth's hair, humming something low and soft. A lullaby. The kind of man might sing to his baby through iron bars. You should sleep, Anna said. There's a blanket on the shelf. It's not clean, but it's warm. Caleb didn't move. I'm not tired. You haven't slept in 3 days. Fry mentioned it. Fry talks too much. He's worried about you. She paused. So am I. The words sat between them, small and heavy. Caleb didn't know what to do with them. Didn't know what to do with any of this. The cabin, the child, the woman who looked at him like he was something other than a man with a badge and a guilty conscience. He took the blanket from the shelf. It smelled of cedar and dust. He spread it on the floor near the fire, his back against the wall, his Colt within reach. Anna returned to her chair. The lantern burned low. Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the gorge. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Anna said, "She's never had a birthday party." Caleb looked at her. "We count the years, but we don't celebrate. There's no one to invite. No cake. No presents." Her voice was quiet, almost to herself. She doesn't complain. She's never had one, so she doesn't know what she's missing. But I know. I know what I'm not giving her. Caleb thought about birthdays. His own, spent alone in boarding houses and rented rooms. His mother's, remembered faintly, a woman who died when he was 12 and never got to see him pin on a badge. "When is her birthday?" he asked. "March 12th. 7 months ago." He'd missed it. Of course he'd missed it. He didn't even know she existed until tonight. "Next year," he said. "We'll do something." Anna looked at him. Her face was unreadable, but her hands tightened around the cup. "You won't be here next year," she said. Caleb didn't answer. Because she was right. He was the sheriff of Pine Ridge. He had a town, a job, a life that didn't include a hidden canyon and a dead man's family. But the watch ticked in his pocket. And Ruth's grey eyes watched him from the pallet, half open now, sleepy and steady. "He told me about you," she murmured. "Papa. He said you were the only man he ever met who didn't lie." Caleb's throat burned. "I lied," he said. "Every day. To myself." Ruth smiled, small and sleepy. "That doesn't count." She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. Caleb sat against the wall, blanket pulled tight around his shoulders, watching the fire fade to embers. Anna slept in her chair, head tilted, hands loose in her lap. The cabin settled around them, creaking and sighing. The watch ticked. 4:17 a.m. October 18th, 1883. Caleb Boone had hanged a man who trusted him. And then he realized that trust was never about the hanging. Elias Crowe didn't send his wife to the sheriff for justice. He didn't send her for mercy. He sent her because he believed, somehow, that the man who carried out the law would also carry its weight. That he would carry *them star. 3 years. 93 days of watching a woman sweep a boardwalk, never knowing she was waiting for him to cross the street. 93 days of carrying a dead man's watch, never understanding why. And then Caleb Boone realized that every truth he'd told himself about that hanging was a lie. He didn't take the watch for evidence. He took it because some part of him knew, even then, that Elias Crowe was handing him something heavier than silver. A debt. A promise. A family. And he'd kept it ticking in his pocket, waiting for the moment it would finally wake him up. Outside, the sky began to lighten. Grey at first, then pink, then gold. The horses stamped and nickered, ready to move. Caleb stood. His joints protested. His eyes burned. But his hands were steady. He walked to the window and watched the sun rise over Crowe's Gorge for the first time in his life. It looked like any other sunrise. Pink clouds, blue sky, light catching the frost on the sage. But it felt different. It felt like the beginning of something. Behind him, Anna stirred. Ruth yawned, small and soft. The fire crackled back to life as Anna fed it kindling. Caleb turned from the window. "I'll come back," he said. Anna looked at him. Not with hope. Not with disbelief. Just waiting. "When?" she said. Caleb touched the watch in his pocket. Felt it tick against his thumb. "Every Sunday," he said. "Until you tell me to stop." Anna didn't smile. But something shifted in her face, something that had been clenched tight, held close, finally loosening. "Sunday's 3 days away," she said. "I know how to count." "Do you know how to fix a roof?" Caleb looked up at the smoke-stained ceiling, the water stain spreading in the corner, the patch of sky visible through a gap in the sod. "No," he said. "But I can learn." Ruth giggled from her palate. Small sound, bright as a bell. "Papa said you were stubborn," she said. "He said that was your best part." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, once, and reached for his coat. Some men spend their whole lives running from their mistakes. Others spend their whole lives trying to outrun a single moment, a door that closed, a word unsaid, a watch they should have returned. But sometimes, if they're lucky, they get another chance. Not to undo what's done. Not to erase the past. Just to show up. To stay. To let the weight they've been carrying alone finally be shared. The sun rose higher. The cabin filled with light. And Caleb Boone, who had hanged a man and stolen his watch and spent 93 days not understanding why, finally let himself begin again. One Sunday at a time. The creek ran cold and clear, cutting through Crowe's Gorge like a vein of silver. Caleb found Anna there at 5:46 a.m., kneeling on the frozen bank, dipping a bucket into the current. Her breath rose in clouds. Her fingers were red at the knuckles. She didn't hear him coming. His boots were quiet on the frost-hardened grass, but she didn't startle when his shadow fell across the water. She just kept filling the bucket. "Ruth's asleep," Anna said. First time she slept through the night since the stitches came out. Caleb nodded. He'd checked the wound himself yesterday. Healing clean. The scar would fade eventually, pale to silver, a quiet reminder of a night neither of them would forget. He'd been here every Sunday for 6 months. 6 months of learning to fix a roof, patch a chimney, split firewood that burned longer and hotter than the pine she'd been gathering. 6 months of watching Ruth grow an inch and a half, her grey eyes getting clearer, her questions getting harder. 6 months of sitting across from Anna at a small wooden table, eating bread she'd baked, drinking coffee she'd brewed, learning the shape of her silence. The bucket filled. Anna lifted it, heavy, water slushing over the rim. Caleb reached to take it. She let him. Fry came by the office yesterday, Caleb said. Said there's talk in town. There's always talk. New kind of talk. He shifted the bucket to his other hand. Someone's been asking questions. About the Crowe gang. About who got away. Anna's hand stilled on her skirt. Who? Didn't get a name. Just a man in a dark coat, buying drinks at the saloon, showing an old wanted poster round. Caleb paused. Elias's face. Reward still active. The wind picked up, sharp and cold. Anna's hair lifted from her shoulders. She didn't seem to notice. They never stopped looking, she said. His old partners. The ones who got away. They thought he hid something before he was caught. Money, maybe. Maps. Names. She looked at the cabin, smoke rising thin from a chimney. They've come before. Twice. We hide. They leave. This time they might not leave. Anna turned to face him. Her eyes were calm, but her jaw was set. Then we'll hide better. Caleb set the bucket down. The water sloshed, settled. That's not why I'm telling you, he said. I'm telling you because I'm done hiding. For you. For her. He paused. For me. Anna didn't speak, but something shifted in her face. That same loosening he'd seen 6 months ago, when he'd promised to come back. Wider now. Deeper. Elias used to say that about you, she said quietly. That you'd never hide from anything. Not even the things that scared you. Caleb's thumb found his scar. He didn't know me. He knew you better than you think. The shots came at 7:12 a.m. 3 of them, fast and close, echoing off the canyon walls. Rifle shots, not pistol. The sound bounced and multiplied until it was impossible to tell direction or distance. Caleb's Colt was in his hand before the third echo faded. He moved toward the cabin, Anna at his heels, her skirts gathered in her fists. The door stood open. Ruth stood in the frame, small and still, her grey eyes fixed on the ridge above. 2 men on horseback. Their silhouettes cut sharp against the pale morning sky. One big, one smaller. Their horses shifted, impatient. And between them, on a bay mare with a familiar white blaze, Deputy Fry sat with his hands tied to the saddle horn. Caleb's chest went cold. The bigger man dismounted. He walked like someone who'd spent years in the saddle, bow-legged and unhurried. His coat was dark, just like the saloon gossip said. His face was weathered, creased, missing an ear on the left side. He smiled when he saw Caleb. Sheriff Boone. His voice was gravel and rust. Heard you'd been spending time out here. Didn't believe it at first. He glanced at Anna, at Ruth. Now I see why. Caleb didn't lower his weapon. Let Fry go. Your deputy here was real cooperative. Told us all about your Sunday visits. The widow. The kid. The man tilted his head. Crowe's kid. You been hiding her, Sheriff? That don't seem very lawful. Last warning. Cut him loose. The man laughed. The sound scraped against the canyon walls. You ain't in town now, Boone. Ain't got your jail or your judge or your pretty little courtroom. Just you and me and 3 people you can't protect. He pulled a folded paper from his coat, held it up. Rewards doubled for the girl. Seems Crowe did hide something after all. Just wasn't money. Caleb felt Anna move behind him. Heard her whisper to Ruth, low and urgent. Felt the weight of the watch in his pocket, ticking steady against his thigh. His scar burned. You want the reward, Caleb said. Take me. I'm worth more to you than a child. The man's smile widened. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know who you are? Every lawman in 3 territories would come hunting if I laid a hand on Sheriff Caleb Boone. He shook his head. But an outlaw's widow and her bastard? No one cares about them. He took a step toward the cabin. Caleb fired. The bullet hit the ground exactly 6 inches in front of the man's boots. Dirt sprayed. The man's horse reared, whinnying. The man himself didn't flinch. "That was a warning," Caleb said. "Next one's between your eyes." The smaller man on the ridge drew his weapon. The big man raised his hand. "Stop him." "You'd shoot me," he said. "Over her." He looked at Anna. "Over another man's wife." Caleb's voice was steady. "She's under my protection." The man laughed again. "Sheriff, you hanged her husband. She ain't your problem. She ain't your anything." The words hung in the cold air. Caleb felt them land, sharp as buckshot. But before he could speak, Anna stepped forward. Her face was pale. Her hands were steady. "He's wrong," she said. "Caleb Boone is not a man who only protects what belongs to him." She looked at the man, calm and direct. "That's why you'll never understand him. That's why you'll never beat him." The man's smile faded. His eyes narrowed. Caleb didn't look at Anna. Couldn't. His hands were steady on the Colt, but everything else, everything inside, was shaking. "Last chance," Caleb said. "Cut Fry loose. Ride out. Don't come back." The big man studied him. The morning light shifted, clouds moving across the sun. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the man spat on the ground. "This ain't over, Boone." He walked to his horse, swung into the saddle. "I know where she lives now. I know where the kid sleeps. You can't be here every minute." He turned his horse. The smaller man followed. Fry's mare stood alone, her reins trailing. The deputy's face was white, but he was alive, breathing, already working his wrists against the ropes. Caleb didn't lower his weapon until the sound of hooves faded completely. Then his hand began to shake. Anna found him at the creek an hour later. He'd walked there without remembering the journey. Sat on the frozen bank without feeling the cold. His Colt rested on the ground beside him, barrel pointed away. His reflection wavered in the moving water, broken and unfamiliar. Anna sat beside him. Not close enough to touch. Not far enough to be a stranger. "You turned on your own kind," she said. "For us." Caleb didn't answer. His hands were in his lap. They wouldn't stop trembling. "Fry will lose his job," he said finally. "Those men will go back to town, spread stories. The sheriff protecting an outlaw's family. The sheriff threatening citizens over a dead man's widow." He paused. "I won't be sheriff much longer." "Is that what you're afraid of? Losing your badge?" He looked at his reflection. The man in the water looked back. "More sun." "I don't know what I'm afraid of," he said. "I've never not known before." Anna was quiet. The creek ran past, cold and clear. "When Elias was arrested," she said, "I was afraid of everything. Afraid they'd hang him. Afraid they wouldn't. Afraid I'd raise Ruth alone. Afraid someone would find us and take her away." She paused. "But the worst fear, the one that kept me awake at night, was that I'd chosen wrong. That I'd married a man who didn't deserve my faith." She picked up a small stone, smooth and dark, turned it in her fingers. "Then he wrote me from jail. Every week. Not about the trial, not about the hanging. About Ruth. Her first smile. Her first tooth. Her first word. He remembered everything I told him, and he wrote it back to me like he was there." She set the stone down. "I stopped being afraid after that. Not because I knew what would happen. Because I knew who he was." Caleb's hands had stopped trembling. He didn't notice when. "You remind me of him," Anna said. "Not the outlaw part. The other part. The part that stays." Caleb looked at her. Her profile was soft in the morning light, her hair loose around her shoulders. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the water, the stones, the ordinary things. But she had chosen to sit here, beside him. "I don't know how to be that man," Caleb said. "I've spent 20 years being the other one. The one who arrests. The one who judges. The one who hangs. His voice cracked. I don't know how to be someone who stays. Anna turned to face him. You've been staying for 6 months, she said. Every Sunday. Through snow and rain and a roof that still leaks every time it storms. You've been staying since the night Ruth cut her arm and you didn't run. She reached out. Her fingers touched his wrist, light as falling leaves. That's who you are, Caleb. Not the badge. Not the rope. The man who stays. Ruth found them an hour later, still sitting by the creek. She didn't ask what they were doing. She just climbed into Caleb's lap, tucked her feet under his coat, and opened her book. Read to me, she said. I'm on page 47. Caleb took the book. His voice was rough at first, then steadier. Anna listened. The creek ran past. The sun climbed higher. He read until his throat was dry and Ruth's eyes grew heavy. Then he closed the book, looked at the ridge where the men had been, and felt something settle in his chest. Not peace. Not certainty. Something sharper. Something that had been sleeping inside him for years, waiting for this exact moment to wake up. He was not the man who had hanged Elias Crowe. He was not the man who had carried a dead man's watch for 93 days without understanding why. He was the man who sat by a creek with a widow and a child, reading a book about a horse, while 2 armed men rode away with threats on their lips. He was the man who stayed. And if those men came back, when they came back, he would be ready. Because staying wasn't passive. Staying wasn't hiding. Staying was the hardest kind of fight there was. Caleb Boone looked at his hands. Steady now. Ready. I need to go back to town, he said. Resign my badge. Sell my horse. Get my things. Anna nodded. We'll be here. I know. He set Ruth gently on the blanket, stood. But before I go, I need to ask you something. She waited. March 12th, he said. Ruth's birthday. I promised we'd do something. Anna's breath caught, barely visible in the cold air. I want to give her a party, Caleb said. Cake. Presents. People who care about her. He paused. I want to give her a family. Anna didn't speak, but her eyes filled with something. Not tears, not quite. Something warmer. She already has a family, Anna said. She's had one for 6 months. She just didn't know it yet. Caleb stood very still. She knows, Anna said. She's known since the night you stitched her arm and didn't run. The watch ticked in his pocket. Steady. Patient. Alive. Caleb reached out. His hand found hers. Her fingers were cold, but they curled around his like they belonged there. I'll be back Friday, he said. 3 days. I know how to count, Anna said. Caleb almost smiled. I know you do. He rode into Pine Ridge at noon. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. Fry met him at the livery, his wrists still raw from the ropes. They're talking, Fry said. The whole town. About the widow. About Crowe's kid. He hesitated. About you. Caleb dismounted. His badge caught the light. Let them talk, he said. He walked toward the sheriff's office, toward the window where he'd stood for 93 mornings, watching a woman sweep a boardwalk. But he didn't stop there. He walked past the office, past the window, past the cold coffee and the empty chair. He walked to the apothecary, where Mr. Pemberton was sweeping the porch. Morning, Sheriff. Morning. Caleb pulled the watch from his pocket. The silver glinted. The initials had worn smooth, almost invisible now. I need to order something. Pemberton leaned on his broom. What kind of something? Cake flour. Sugar. Candles. Caleb paused. And a book about horses. The good kind, with pictures. Pemberton raised an eyebrow. Birthday party. Yes, sir. Caleb put the watch back in his pocket. My daughter's turning 8. The words felt strange in his mouth. Strange and right. Pemberton nodded slowly. When's the big day? March 12th. I need it delivered to Crowe's Gorge. The broom stopped moving. Pemberton looked at Caleb for a long moment. Then he nodded again. I'll see what I can do, Sheriff. Thank you. Caleb turned, then stopped. And Pemberton. Sir. I'm not sheriff anymore. Pemberton studied him. The wind picked up, cold and clean. What are you, then? He asked. Caleb thought about Anna's hands around a tin cup. Ruth's grey eyes, patient as winter. A watch that had stopped ticking at 7:43 on the morning he finally understood. I'm figuring that out, he said. But I think I'm getting close. He walked back to his horse, swung into the saddle, and pointed her toward the cut-off road. Behind him, Pine Ridge went about its day. Wagons rolled. Doors opened and closed. A man with a broom swept dust from a boardwalk. Ahead of him, a canyon waited. A woman waited. A child waited. Caleb Boone rode toward them, and badged, unpinned, unhurried. The watch ticked against his thigh, and for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't running toward something. He was coming home.